This episode is sponsored by Peloton. By now, you guys probably know that Peloton is a huge part of my fitness routine. We've had a bike for about 2 years now, and it's allowed me to carve out fitness into my life in a way that I never had before. I think I've done at least 500 classes in the last 2 years. It doesn't feel right if I've finished my day and not spent some time with Ben Aldis or Emma Lovewell or any of the other instructors that really do feel like a part of my life at this point. I never had an easy time having fitness be a regular part of my day, my routine, who I was, until I got involved in Peloton. I highly encourage you guys to check it out for yourself. Try Peloton risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only, not available in remote locations. See additional terms at www.onepeloton.com/home trial. This episode is brought to you by Zelle. I always use Zelle when I'm sending money back and forth. We actually just used it this week to send a payment to our wedding planner. It's incredibly convenient and easy. When anyone sends you money or if you need to get paid back, always ask for Zelle. With Zelle, the money goes straight into your bank account, and it works even if the sender banks somewhere else different than you in the US. Look for Zelle in your banking app today. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual, so every once in a while, we need a little bit of help. Therapy has been a huge part of that for me. I'm a huge proponent of weekly therapy. I've been going for a couple years now. It's a great way to check in with myself, work on my goals, how I'm feeling, get some new perspective. I highly encourage people to check it out. And as the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match the therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/maze. That's betterhelp.com/MAYS.
This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me tonight is my good friend Mitchell Schwartz. Mitch, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I sincerely appreciate you helping us out with this. Nate is out again, obviously for personal reasons we've talked about. He will be back next week. Everyone's doing great on that front. If you're worried or curious, everyone's doing very, very well. So excited to get Nate back, but very happy that you are here to do this with us tonight. We're going to dig into a lot of stuff from week 10. Talk about the Bucs win, chat about what the hell is going on with the bad teams in the AFC West, chat a little Chiefs because you're here and it would seem silly to do this entire show without talking about the Chiefs for at least a bit. Let's start, though, with the game of the day, probably one of the games of the season when it's all said and done. The Vikings beat the Bills 33-30, an absolutely wild one. I'm going to start this conversation with a question that I've posed several times to several different people on this podcast so far this season. The Vikings are 8-1. Are the Vikings good?
They might be above the equator in DVOA after this week. They might be above 18th overall. And it's kind of wild because you watch them and you see like a lot of good things that they do. And you're like, yeah, I really believe in it. But they also do some stuff they don't believe in, and they just have that inherent like Vikings history. And unfortunately, what we think of Cousins the quarterback and kind of his abilities to do it in the playoffs and on the bigger stages. And it feels like they're a good team. They obviously don't feel like an 8-1 team. And I think that's kind of where the disconnect lies, is we don't know how to kind of properly evaluate them and properly place them in amongst the NFL elite.
So I have 2 or 3 different elements of this game that have caused me to think a little bit differently about the Vikings now than I did when I woke up this morning. The first involves Justin Jefferson. Today was a reminder that Justin Jefferson is truly one of the 5-10 elite players in the NFL, the plays that he made in this game. I want to say that 8 of his catches in this game, according to Next Gen Stats, Beller can pull off the tweet and the stat, but I want to say 8 catches that he had in this game. 9 receptions that he had in this game, according to Next Gen Stats, had a sub 50% completion probability, which when you watch that game, that's what it felt like. Every single time he went up to make a play, it was a 50-50 ball. It was a contested catch. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the 4th and 18 catch. Maybe the best catch I've ever seen in terms of stakes, what it was like in the moment, when it came in the game, everything about the mechanics of it. Was that the best catch you've ever seen?
I think so when you put all those things together because I mean, it's 4th and 18. You're making an Odell-like catch, except the other guy kind of caught it too, and then you have the physical strength to like snatch it from him, which my shoulder, one, I wouldn't have had the mobility to do it because I have O-line shoulders, and two, the strength to just like reach from behind your head and pull with enough force to yank the ball from a guy who has two hands on it. Again,
The
4th
having his
down.
hand on it coming down, the fact that he kept it in one hand through contact and through hitting the ground is absolutely insane. So we all know Justin Jefferson is good. My concern over the first, let's say, 8 weeks of the season with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, and the composition of this offense is that they weren't pushing the ball down the field at all. Kirk Cousins through 8 weeks was 33rd of 35 quarterbacks in air yards per target. It's about 6 air yards per throw. Okay. Justin Jefferson had 7 targets of 20 plus air yards over the first 8 weeks. He's had 7 over the last 2 games. Over the last 2 games, Kirk Cousins is averaging 9.2 air yards per target, which is 6th among all 32 quarterbacks. So if I'm going to see the offense in a different way, them willing to push the ball down the field and them willing to be more aggressive with some of these 50-50 tight window, however you want to describe them, throws to Jefferson, that is a very good starting point. Because if you're going to allow him to make these sorts of plays, then who you are as an offense changes in my mind. And I think that's an important step in kind of reconfiguring what we think about whether this team is actually good at football.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And you have to wonder, obviously teams are going to go into the year and say, all right, we can't let this guy beat us. We can't let him beat us deep. We got a new offensive coach, and you're kind of wondering, what part of it is scheme, what part of it is what the Vikings are choosing to do, and what the defense is dictating to them. And then there's games like today where you just realize, like, dude, just throw it to him. Like, just throw it up to him. Yeah. And it's like what we've seen with Burrow and Chase. Like, Burrow just throws it up to him, and he does it to all his receivers, but he kind of just empowers his big guys and his good players to go get it and to have fun and to like the challenge of coming down with it in 2-on-1 situations. And so whether the Vikings are doing something different structurally the last couple of weeks, whether they've told Kirk, like, dude, just throw it to him. Like, even if it's not, quote unquote, classically open, you got to trust your guy, or whether something sparked and he realized today he just had to do it to have a chance. I think it's awesome for the offense. And like you said, you can't dink and dunk and have a guy that good and that explosive and not utilize his full tool bag. And so if they're able to do that more consistently and kind of, defenses are saying, all right, we're going to play, too high, or we're going to play whatever and take away Jefferson deep, and you're still shredding them and you're still throwing it to him when he's double covered, he's coming down with it. That changes your offense drastically. And, this offense is built on kind of run game, play action, under center stuff. And if you're forced now to, stay back there because they're pushing the ball down the field, it drastically changes that run game and what they can do up front.
The other element of their offense that I was really encouraged by today, the thing I was most worried about, beyond the air yard stuff, beyond their inability to push the ball down the field over the first 8 weeks or so, the interior of the offensive line was a disaster. Like, the way that the right guard was playing, and at times the center and the left guard, I was consistently worried about their ability to hold up. And in this game, I thought they played much, much better. There were a couple of moments, I think it was the 3rd and 9 late in the second quarter, where Cousins held out for a long time before finding Hockenson over the middle of the field. And he just didn't have that sort of time in those sorts of moments for long stretches of this season. And so if they can play better up front on offense, and they're willing to push the ball down the field, which those things can happen in concert with each other, that makes me a lot more bullish on the offensive side of the ball. And then extending kind of this trenches conversation, I thought they outplayed the Bills up front on both sides of the ball in this game. I thought that Harrison Phillips had some really nice moments. Z had some really big, not sacks, but pressures on 3rd down that sped Allen up. And if they can outplay people on offense and defense up front, then we're really talking here, because they have not been able to do that so far this year. On defense, they have. Like, their pass rush is good, but on offense, they haven't. So that was the other kernel of like, okay, if this is going to be different, then I can talk and think about you differently than I have been so far this season.
Right. And first off, thank you for not using the offensive linemen's names when you were saying that they weren't playing so well. I appreciate you just pointing out positions.
It doesn't really matter.
No, it does, because we get talked about like worst case scenario typically. So I appreciate you're just kind of pointing out positions and people don't have in their head like, oh, that guy sucks. So I do actually appreciate that. But yeah, to your point, I think the interior of the offensive line. So there's quarterbacks kind of fall into buckets of would they rather have their outside feel more protected, would they rather have the inside. Cousins isn't a guy who's necessarily going to break the pocket and look to run and throw on the run. And so you're talking about a guy who's a little bit more of a true pocket passer when he does throw it. And those guys tend to like feeling secure up the middle because that's where they need to step into the throw. That's where they're going to drive the throw from. If they do move in the pocket, it's going to be very minimal, kind of laterally just to avoid things. But that middle of the pocket, being solidified, feeling good about things is absolutely a huge thing. And, you see other teams and they put a lot of money, they put a lot of emphasis on securing those inside three because that's what makes the quarterback feel comfortable. And so kind of regardless of, what their specific scheme is, what their thoughts are, that inside being able to do that now allows you, like you said, those third and longs where the offense isn't necessarily at its greatest ability to, push the ball down the field. Maybe that extra half second that does allow Jefferson to beat double coverage, that does allow someone else to get open when they're shifting to Jefferson. Maybe on 2nd and 8, they run the ball and they get that little bit more push, and now it's 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 5, and that can change what you're doing offensively. It makes a really big difference. And to have that kind of test against the Buffalo front that we've seen all season cause havoc, and not just the edge guys, we've seen, Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips and really the whole kind of front 8 or front 10 of what Buffalo is bringing on the defensive side, just completely shred teams and really take over games. And for the Vikings O-line to, match that test and, like you said, outplay them on both sides of the ball, as you mentioned, especially on the inside of the offensive line, it really is a good stepping stone for them, and you just have to build on that. And I think, we expected their defensive line, Minnesota's, to be good and to be able to rush the passer. Obviously, the guys on the edge kind of leading that charge a little bit. But Buffalo was kind of playing a little bit, less Josh Allen throwing the ball down the field early on. It did feel like they were, trying to take a few throws off his plate, lean a little bit more on the run, a little bit more on physicality, see if they can play that style of game. And Minnesota responded well. They got to Allen in the pass game, but they also did some good things up front, defending the run.
There was a 3rd and 2, like little tiny moments in this game. There was a 3rd and 2 in the third quarter. Singletary was stuffed. Harrison Phillips was playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. There were a lot of those moments in this game where you just noticed those guys up front from Minnesota in ways that, especially on the interior on both sides of the ball, I hadn't previously this season. So you talk about the interior, the defensive line for Buffalo. The one guy I think they really missed in this game was Greg Rousseau. And then Jordan Poyer also didn't play. So I'm wondering, is this sort of a letdown from the Bills? Are you concerned about them? Do you feel like there are a couple guys, like when they get back and they get right, it'll be smooth sailing? Where are you on Buffalo after today and after some of the missteps they've had really over the last couple weeks?
I do think you have to cool down just a little bit on them. I think as of 2 weeks ago, we saw them as, up there with the Eagles, but I think realistically, we probably like their playoff chances the best of anybody, is in terms of the most complete team, kind of trust the quarterback in the playoffs a little bit more than what we've seen historically the last couple of years from Philly. And so this changes things. And I think, as much as we've talked about O-line, D-line, guys who are missing, injuries, I think some of the Josh Allen decisions, some of the pass plays, the turnovers are really concerning. That's a big part of his game that he's cleaned up in the last year and a half or so, and that he's kind of catapulted himself into that upper echelon of quarterbacks with. Like, the cool plays are cool, and he can hurdle guys. He can throw it 70 yards downfield with a sprained UCL. He can do all these sorts of crazy things. But it was that consistency, the not being reckless, the throwing to your check down, the picking up the 3rd and 12 with your feet and then sliding and getting down. And now he's reverted a little bit, and I don't know if it's pressing. I don't know if he's gotten a little too confident and thinks he can kind of get away with whatever. But that would be my biggest worry about them. My second biggest worry would be the injuries. And like you said, there's a couple guys missing. They've had a couple guys missing in a lot of these games lately, and it does seem to be stacking up a little bit. They got Hyde out for the season, and this is a team that, they're going to go as the quarterback goes. Obviously, it was great to see him not have to miss a week, but those minor injuries, like, they start to pile up, and it really tests your depth. And then you got guys playing who don't usually play, and maybe now your 3rd or 4th defensive tackle isn't used to playing 50 plus snaps, and he gets a little beat up, and then it puts more stress on another guy, and maybe your starter has to come back a week early because you just don't have the depth, and now he gets re-injured. And so these things can kind of get out of control. They can spiral a little bit. We've seen disaster injury seasons from Baltimore, from San Francisco, where things just seem like they're going crazy. Buffalo's not there yet, but I am a little bit worried about their injury situation. For me, it's just get to the playoffs as healthy as you can be, and we'll see what happens. There's only one bye week now, and we kind of thought Buffalo had the inside track after beating Kansas City, and now that's completely shifted to Kansas City. And so, if this is a Buffalo team that's a little bit more beat up than some of the other teams, and now they don't have that one seed and that bye once they reach the playoffs, that could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, you'd hope that when Rousseau comes back, Poyer comes back, Trey White should be back fairly soon, Kyer Elam missed this game, that their defense can be a little bit better than what we've seen. The Allen decision-making stuff, it's just kind of strange to me, just because that was why he felt so scary in the early part of the season, is that it just seemed like he was pushing all the right buttons beyond like the physical tools that we always see. The decision-making was on point consistently. Him taking what's there and just, I'll dink and dunk you underneath. That's what you're going to give to me. Just understanding exactly how he needed to play in these given moments. And I mean, now the amount of red zone turnovers, I know one was on 4th down, who cares? But the one at the end of the game, if that doesn't happen, do they win this game? The last couple red zone turnovers he had last week. I mean, that's the part that is a little bit worrying. It's like, he seems like he's losing his mind in some of these moments where it didn't seem like that for the first half of the season. But I do think they'll be better when they get healthier. And listen, if Justin Jefferson doesn't make that insane play on 4th and 18, if they don't fumble on their own goal line and allow the Bills or the Vikings to score a touchdown in a way that, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I saw that, if I ever have. And there are a couple bounces of the ball here from them beating this Minnesota team. They were up 2 scores for most of the game. So I'm not doing any victory laps about how great the Vikings are after that game. They're better than I thought they were, and I'm not panicking about the Bills, but I do think this is a really good moment for us to kind of step back and reconsider the way that we're talking about both of these teams.
Yeah, I agree. And getting back to your first question is, are the Vikings any good? Where do you rank them? I did not think this would be a game where you get into the fourth quarter, you get into the 2-minute drill, and both sides are kind of trading shots and trading blows. And it felt like one of those big time games where, both offenses, whenever they have the ball, they're going to go down and score. Like, I just didn't have that feeling about this Vikings team. And I do think that's one thing that they showed, that they can do that, against a team that, theoretically has the best defense. I know we just talked about them missing a few guys, but I think that was maybe the more surprising thing coming out of it, is that it felt like, kind of that big time playoff game that when things get down to it, there's the flurry of points at the end because score, and they go back and forth and they trade, and then you end up in overtime, and kind of fizzled out just a little bit in overtime. But it was just a little bit more impressive from the Vikings than I would have expected. And I was curious what you thought in terms of kind of what they showed on the offensive side at the end of the game, and whether you think that's truly who they are, or who they could be, or is that more just one crazy receiver taking over the game?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I do think the one crazy receiver can make that sort of difference, and he is that good. But you look at the entire picture of this game from Kirk Cousins. I mean, he threw 2 bad interceptions. TJ Hawkinson got an offensive pass interference penalty in the end zone for breaking up a throw. When's the last time you saw that? When an offensive player was called for pass interference in the same way we would call a defensive player for pass interference because the throw was right to the defender. Like, that happened in this game. So, and Devin Singletary fumbles on the 25-yard line. Like, it's the same way these games are with a lot of 2 good teams, right? 5 different bounces of the ball and the game could go 100 different ways. So I am a little bit more optimistic about the Vikings offense simply because they're willing to push the ball down the field. But I do think that there are enough underlying concerns about this team's ceiling based on who its quarterback is. And I think he's fine. But I don't think this game was without its blemishes.
Well, you did just subconsciously call them a good team, and you did say that it was, 2 good teams playing each other. So you kind of put them pretty close to each other in terms of the matchup. Does this count as a Kirk Cousins primetime game, or is this in that 1 p.m. Eastern slot and we can't properly evaluate him?
Well, just because it's getting dark at 4 p.m. On the East Coast and the Midwest, I still don't think this counts as a primetime game. So he's going to play primetime.
Well, this is the best version of him then.
This team is going to be playing in the playoffs. And I do think that, again, I feel better about them now than I did this morning because of some of the stuff that I saw. But we'll see what their ceiling is in the NFC when they have to play against the Niners, when they have to play against the Eagles and all. I mean, the one time we saw them play against the Eagles this year, it was a disaster. But again, I do think they're a better team than I did 24 hours ago. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to talk about the other game of the day, Packers-Cowboys. With winter weather making it hard to stay active, here's a gift idea for the outdoor adventurer in your life, the Allbirds Meisel Collection. Designed for those who won't take snow for an answer, the Meisel features built-in puddle guard technology to help keep the winter wonderland where it belongs. not in your shoes. The premium ZQ certified merino wool with all Dasher Meisel provides next level comfort even on the coldest winter days. And their weather ready soles offer enhanced traction so you can go on winter runs with confidence. Built using premium natural materials with a low environmental impact, Allbirds put the carbon footprint right on the shoe so you can see the difference that it makes. This holiday season, get on their nice list when you shop the Allbirds Meisel collection. Discover your perfect pair at allbirds.com today. That's ALLBIRDS.com. It's time to knock that new business idea out of the park with Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Forget the off-season work. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling warm-ups or wall hangers, it's time to start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. Shopify fields all the sales channels to grow a winning business, from in-person POS systems to the all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. It's how every minute, new sellers from around the world score their first sale with Shopify, and you can too. When you're ready to take a winning idea to the world, team up with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Try out Shopify for free today and start selling anywhere. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/maze. Go to shopify.com/maze to start selling online today. Shopify.com/maze.
Here are the categories in the Jeopardy round.
Well done, Butter. All right. Packers-Cowboys, another great game. The game goes to overtime. Nice little primetime national TV spot. Packers win this game. They go to 4-6. Kind of feels like maybe too little too late. Niners winning tonight. And they still have like a 15% chance to make the playoffs, according to 538. You guys can look at other playoff odds. I'm sure they're not too optimistic about what Green Bay can do from here. It's kind of how it feels to me. This is a good version of the Packers. I think that the offensive mix that they had is what I want to see from them. But again, still feels like it's going to be too much of an uphill battle for them to do much from here.
Did you look at the box score? Do you know Aaron Rodgers' stat line?
He was 14 of 20.
20 passes. That's nuts in an overtime game. Like, talking about the balance, like they were basically 2-1 rush to pass, which is nuts. And Rodgers had those deep passes to Watson that they finally connect on and everyone's all excited about. But
that's what they should be, though.
Strange. Yeah, I know. It's strange to think that like this is the way they have to play football with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback in that scheme.
Against this team specifically, I think that's exactly what you have to do. And well, we can talk about that. I think that against the best version of the Cowboys offense, defense, this is what you'd want to do. I don't think that version existed today. Well, we can get into that a little bit. But Rodgers making 4, 5, 6 throws that are just insane, combined with them running the ball really efficiently, which they've done all year. Even if you've been concerned about the state of their passing game, they've run the ball well, especially with Jones. And then him making the throw he made to Watson down the right sideline for the touchdown, the throw he made to Watson that should have been another touchdown down the right sideline, but Watson slowed down, the one he made to Watkins that he essentially put in his face mask on the right sideline. I mean, and then the RPO to Lazard. Like, you just need him to make that handful of throws each game, play well in defense, and run the ball. I think that's exactly what they need to do based on the personnel that they have. He also played better today. Like, that's the frustrating part about talking about the Packers this year, is that you're like, man, what's wrong? And the receiving talent just isn't there. And they look so disjointed on offense. And a lot of it comes down to the quarterback just wasn't playing very well. And he played better today. It's not any more complicated than that sometimes.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, clearly his thumb's affecting him. Like, there are some passes that are very atypical from him. I don't think physically he would have dropped off enough from back-to-back MVP seasons to be making some of the really, really, really strange throws that we've just not seen from him really in his entire career. Like, he has the best TD to interception ratio in NFL history. Now, a lot of that is by choice because he chooses not to, kind of force the ball into spots.
Yes.
But it's also because he has exceptional accuracy and he can throw it exactly where he wants it most of the time. And we've just seen these kind of squirrely passes that come out funky and that are, off by 5-8 yards, and they're just not typical, like that pass to Bakhtiari, from the week before. It's a casual flick of the wrist that he probably completes every single time. And I guarantee in practice, that ball is placed in the back half of the end zone and it's very easy and it's catchable. And the thumb just doesn't seem fully there. It did seem like it took a step in the right direction. Like you said, he played better today. And part of that is he made Aaron Rodgers throws and he zipped it in there and he put it, exactly like you said, into guys' faces where they were forced to catch the ball. So that's a really positive development. But it seems strange that this is the version that they need to, kind of produce. And like you said, against Dallas, but this is essentially the way the NFC is going to go. This is what they're going to need in the playoffs to be successful. The counterpoint is they just prove that they can go up against one of, the better teams in that conference rather, and play the kind of football that is successful once you get into the winter months. And the physicality up front on both sides of the ball, being able to control things, pick and choose your spots to throw downfield, throw it accurately, and then the crazy Aaron Rodgers plays. So a bit of a positive development, and still not super excited about this team for the long term. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think about the short term, about 2022, I still feel like they're way too far to go. They probably won't make the playoffs, and I think that's why losing to Detroit last week, losing that game they lost to the Giants, all those close ones, that's why they're heartbreakers, because you didn't give yourself a chance to right the ship. We're going to talk about the Bucs here in a bit. It's exactly what happened. Just based on the state of the division, they were allowed to have some shitty moments over the first half of the season, and it didn't really matter because they're still going to make the playoffs. The Packers just didn't get that sort of break because of how well the Vikings were playing, or what the Vikings record is, I guess. So that's the frustrating part. I will say, if they continue to play well down the stretch, maybe it changes the complexion of stuff for 2023. Rather than saying, do we need to move on from him? Is that the best plan? We can, based on the way that contract is structured. If you get to the end of the season, you say our best chance to do something over the next year with this core is to keep him, and that gives us our best shot. Maybe this trajectory and more games like this will lead you to that conclusion by the end of the year.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I think the most encouraging part, we've talked about kind of the balance on the offensive side of the ball, what they needed to do. They got down 24 or 28-14 in the third quarter. The game was tied. They come out of the half. Dallas scores, I think, in the middle of the third quarter, and then towards the end of the third quarter. And it felt like, all right, Green Bay, they stayed with them in the first half. Dallas is starting to pull away. The offense looks good. The defense is doing what they need to do. And Green Bay came back and they fought back and they tied it and they got the game to overtime and they won. And, I have my cool setup so I don't have to turn any game off physically, but like that was the game I was ready to, take my attention away from and just, all right, this one's over. And, Green Bay is kind of who we thought they were based on the first couple months of the season. And so I think that ability to fight back, despite a couple testy moments from Rodgers on the sideline. And I completely agree with him. I mean, that end of game scenario where Green Bay basically just runs the ball, chooses a play on third down that Aaron Rodgers is clearly not too happy about. Comes to the sideline, cusses out LaFleur, and they basically just give up and go to overtime. I thought that was really strange. And I couldn't quite tell if that was like, hey, I don't actually trust my offense. I don't really think these guys can, go down the field and not need to punt with a minute and a half left for Dallas and to give them the ball right back. I thought that was kind of one of those odd situations that even in this victory, you could kind of look at that as all right, things are still pretty messed up there. And there's still, this huge disconnect between quarterback and head coach.
His just general demeanor, the body language, some of the reactions. If you were on that team, how do you think you would see that? How would you process the way he's acted this year?
Man, that's a tough one because, from the exterior view, it kind of looks like, he puts himself on a certain level and he has seen that a lot of guys are beneath him and not up to his level and doing things that, he doesn't approve of. And then, really the worst thing you can do is become that guy who kind of sows disconnect between the coaches and the players. And when your leader and the guy who just got the biggest contract and, quarterback in NFL history on an, annual average salary basis is openly, defiant of the head coach when he, gets in his moods and pouts and looks very disconnected from everything, like that has a big effect on the rest of the locker room. And, when you hear about cancer in the locker room, essentially that's what that looks like. It's a guy who looks disconnected, uninterested, openly criticizes the coaches, openly, kind of says, oh, we should be doing this, we could be doing that. The past few weeks, it's actually kind of led me to this little thought in my head that, Rodgers obviously thinks highly of himself. He's talked about, he called that. Yeah, he called the Matt Flynn game that Flynn had like 6 touchdowns. I forget which random Green Bay quarterback that was that put up 6 TDs and got a big contract and flamed out. Yeah, so like he called that game. Of course he did. It's interesting to me that the play comes into Rodgers' ear and he doesn't switch it. Like, he seems really okay with just calling the play, knowing it's going to fail, and kind of spiting LaFleur over it. And like, he seems like the kind of guy that the play would come in and he would just choose a different one because he trusts it better and he thinks that's the better chance to win. So it's this like little thought that's been in my head of kind of how to parse that out between this guy who is, happy enough to just like have this play that fails and be able to yell at his coach, but also a guy who thinks he's this brilliant, kind of thoughtful guy and can call a great game and understands everything about football. And seems exactly like someone who would defy his coach and just call a better quote unquote play in his head at the line of scrimmage. And I don't know quite how to parse that, but I figured you'd be the guy to talk about that too. Cause it seems like he would just get a call and be like, nah, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to call my thing. But every time it's 3rd and short, he just runs the play and then he goes back to the sidelines and cusses his coach out.
It's so hard as someone who just wants to analyze this stuff from what scheme are they running? Are they doing things the right way? Is this the right offense to be running for your players? Oh, that was the right play call in that situation. And in talking about the Packers, you have to consistently psychoanalyze the motivations and emotions of the quarterback. And it's just like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to properly say like, well, the Packers are struggling because their quarterback is in this sort of mood. But in order to actually talk about them and evaluate them properly, you probably have to take that into consideration.
And you shouldn't have to do that after he, held the team hostage in the offseason and forced them to give him this awesome
multiple
contract.
Years.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to be nice there. But he finally got that crazy contract that, kind of hamstrung them to do other things. And then he'll get upset because they don't bring in certain guys or they don't draft certain players. And it's like, well, you're the biggest cap hit in NFL history. And we have to kind of figure this out because you're choosing to be the highest paid guy over taking a little bit less money or not being the absolute highest paid so we can spend a little more on receivers or do this. And, the narrative of Devontae wanting to go play with Carr, the more we kind of see things, the more it might just be he kind of needed a break from Rodgers too. And, his old friend from college looked like the right guy to get back with. So yeah, it's kind of crappy that we're at this place that we have to analyze his mood and what he's thinking, how he's acting on the sidelines. This looks a lot like, the end of the McCarthy area and why they moved on from McCarthy. It looks a little bit like that first year with LaFleur, where even though they went 13-3, they still hadn't quite figured each other out. And there was still a little bit of that back and forth. Yeah. And obviously they figured it out the last couple of years. And now it seems like the power has shifted a bit back to Rodgers. And maybe, he's got a bit too much influence. Like you said, when you're looking at the schematics and what fits the players, what fits the team, it seems like the pendulum has definitely swung back towards catering more to Rodgers than it is to kind of stick to the LaFleur offense.
Let's talk about the Cowboys a little bit. After watching this game, I'm a little bit concerned about the defense. And when you take out a couple specific pieces, I think you saw the impact of that today. Losing Anthony Barr feels huge because it moves Micah Parsons away from rushing the passer all the time. And I do think that really matters when you're talking about this team's ceiling on defense and how scary they can be play in and play out. I also think that losing Jordan Lewis to IR, replacing him with Bland, his last name is Bland, which I feel is just unfortunate. I think it's number 26, and he's now their nickel. And I think that showed up in a couple big moments today when, I think that the Watson completion on that crosser Bland was on him. And then having Calvin Joseph come in because Anthony Brown got hurt in this game. You're down 2 starting corners. You're down a starting linebacker who moves your best player out of position for at least some situational stuff. So now we're starting to chip away at the idea of what the Cowboys defense is. And that leaves me a little bit worried about their standing in this entire NFC conversation.
Yeah, I'd probably leave the best defensive player in football at the position he can wreck games the most easily.
I tend to agree with you.
That should force him to play off the ball linebacker and if you want to say, oh, well, he can't stay in coverage or, whoever would be that backup to Barr can't, do the things that Parsons can do in coverage, whatever. Like, obviously that's the case. I mean, he's Parsons, but also maybe Parsons getting after the quarterback means he doesn't have to cover as long. And, maybe you're able to combo all these pass rushers. And now it's not just 1 or 2 good pass rushers every play. Now it's 3 of them. And one of them is Micah Parsons. It does look like maybe he's a little bit hurt. He's got the ankle thing and there are a couple times
that's
he
also
came
another
out
consideration.
And it looked like it was pretty heavily taped and a little bit, kind of thicker down there in terms of whatever wrap or tape he's doing. And, kind of comes off and gets checked out. So I think there's this combination of Like you said, now he's not playing the position that he wrecks games the most easily and the quickest. He is a little bit banged up. The overall depth is starting to struggle a bit. And, we've seen all these great defenses. Like it's exceptionally hard in today's NFL to be good on the back end and to have your defense run because coverage is just that exceptional that you shut guys down every single week. And that's really the driving force. Like the Dallas defense was the Dallas defense in large part because the front four got to quarterbacks at record pace and they were able to.
It's like 80% of what made them the Dallas defense.
Exactly. And that's what made the Niners a few years ago and is making them this year. And even though they've got a few injuries, like basically every great defense, you talk about Buffalo's defense, it's the front four. Like it's the front four. It's getting pressure on the quarterback and doing it quickly. That covers up a lot of things on the back end. It's so difficult to have like one cover corner, let alone three cover corners in the way you need it in today's NFL. And so, yeah, when you're, getting injuries in the back end that pull the best defensive player in football away from playing the most important position on the defensive side, I don't agree with moving him, and that greatly affects the defense.
On offense, a couple of rough moments for Dak in this game. Red zone and end zone interception, really no explaining it away. That just can't happen. The second one, interesting defensive structure and scheme by the Cowboys. They dropped into like a weird version of cover 2 where the safety dropped down as like the Tampa player. And that screwed up the way that Lamb was supposed to read that, because I think against a single high safety, you want to cross his face. Against a 2 high look, you want to actually run between the safeties. It was neither. It was actually cover 2, but there was somebody dropping down. So he took it down the middle of the field and Dak throws an interception. So you take out those couple plays and it looks like a very different game for the Cowboys offense. So I still feel pretty good about them in the long run. I thought Jair Alexander had a couple really nice moments late in this game in huge situations, but it was a good test against a better defense than the one they played since Dak got back. So where do you sit with Dallas, their offense, and kind of what they could look like here by the end of the season?
Their offense is so tricky because like the top end feels so good, but I just don't feel like they ever really get there, and they can maybe do it in 1 or 2 game spurts, but it just doesn't seem like they have that consistency. And really going back, I guess it was early last year, maybe before Dak pulled his calf, that they looked the best they had looked for like 4 weeks in a row and everything was clicking. But for the most part, over the last few years, it's been a lot of, oh, well, they could be good. They should be a top 5 offense. And this thing happened. Quarterback got hurt. This guy got hurt. Tyron got hurt. So there's all these little things that like have prevented them from being truly one of the best offenses, kind of over a full season. And it feels like, again, there's just something missing that like isn't quite there. I don't know if it's, the true number 1 receiver that they don't have, the Tyreek guy or, the Jefferson or the Chase that can, truly be the guy that takes over a game. Maybe Odell comes in and, they've been courting him enough that it seems like, I don't know why they keep making it seem like they want to pay him more money than they should in the media. But it seems like, they're willing to do that. So good on them, I guess. I don't know if it's adding that extra piece and now you're just that much more explosive, because the best version of the Dallas offense was, kind of 3 top level receivers and Dak being healthy and a really solidified offensive line. And, they just kind of downgraded a little bit personnel wise. And to combat that, they've upgraded a little bit in terms of, Dak's experience and being able to handle different things. So I think, we kind of wish upon what we think and what we hope for their offense. I don't know that, we've really ever seen it consistently enough to think like that's the version that's going to show up in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think one more receiving option would be absolutely huge for them. I mean, because Gallup he's looked fine since he got back, but I don't think he's enough of a difference maker to really move the needle. CeeDee Lamb excellent today, but if he's kind of your 1A and you also have a 1B, I mean, I do think that would change things for them and change the complexion of who they are in a way that it might not for some other offenses. Like, I don't know, what Odell on the Chiefs, do you think it is like a huge difference maker for them at this stage?
I think it is if he's as explosive as he has been in the past, because there's an element of like, they used to be able to throw RPOs and Tyreek would catch one on the run and house it. Or, when Sammy was 4 years younger, he could catch a ball and he still had the explosion. And, I remember vividly the first game against Jacksonville, he caught a ball over the middle and just exploded through the middle for like a 70-yard touchdown. There's been a couple times where, Pat's accurately thrown a pass to, Juju kind of on an RPO, one of those kind of middle slants or crossers, and he catches it and it's got all the open room. And someone catches him. They have explosion. They have the ability to go deep. They obviously have MVS, but having a guy that can, kind of catch those, quick hitting passes and get serious yards after catch. I mean, Odell on the Giants is probably the best slant receiver in NFL history. He would just catch them regularly and turn them into touchdowns. He's obviously not that guy anymore, but that in the Chiefs offense could be really valuable. And, again, that could be really valuable for Dallas. So I'm sure the teams are kind of trying to figure out exactly how healthy he is and whether you get, kind of full explosive version of it. Because Odell, the threat, but more of the possession receiver. I don't know if that drastically alters offenses if he's not, fully back. And with ACLs, it's really difficult. And usually you don't get, that full explosion back until the second year.
Yeah, I think that with Dallas, he does change who they are offensively. But for me, my biggest question, my biggest concern after this game and after the last couple of weeks is what are they defensively for the rest of the season? Because even if you're optimistic about their offense, which I am, I think Dak is a really good player. I think that what they've shown over the last couple of weeks before this game, just the overall plan on offense, we're going to run the ball a lot of under center play action. We're going to get Dak on the move. I've just enjoyed what I've seen from them more than I have over the last couple of years, but I still think for them to truly be a threat in the NFC, their defense needs to be the scariest part of who they are. And right now we're just losing elements of that were there earlier in the season. And that would worry me if I were a Cowboys fan.
Very quick question. How much do you think them forcing Zeke to be the starting running back and to get 15 to 20 touches, how much do you think that messes with the top end of what they could be, or does it mess with that at all?
I think it messes with it somewhat. We said this the day after Pollard had his first big game when Elliott was hurt, which he was again today. Tony Pollard had 22 carries for 115 yards. I don't think Tony Pollard is somebody who should get 25 carries a game. There's a reason that he doesn't. I understand why they don't do that. But if you're going to
because they overpaid their running back?
No, because they're worried about his workload and his ability to hold up and all that stuff, which is fine. If you watch him every day in practice, I've been willing to concede that. But if you're going to hand the ball to running backs 25 times, they did it 27 times in this game, why can't Tony Pollard get 16 carries and Zeke gets 9 instead of the other way around? Is there anything preventing you from doing that? Because we've seen his ability to stay explosive and stay efficient with this sort of workload. So if he gets 15 touches a game and Zeke gets 10 touches a game where you're just flipping the ratio, what's wrong with that? That's all I'm asking for. I just don't want Zeke to be the lead back within the offense. I just don't think he should be anymore.
Right. And what's stopping that, again, I think is the contract. It's choosing him 4th or 5th overall, whatever it was, and then paying him 15 a year to be the top paid running back. It's that insistence that this is the guy. You can say, oh, they've seen him in practice and they know he can't handle the workload, all that stuff, but we've never gotten indication that that's specifically the reason. It just seems
I'm just trying to find reasons that make sense.
I know that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's only 2 weeks and, it's a lot more difficult to do that for 17 weeks, but he's had 2 weeks now where he gets 20 plus, touches and carries, and he's stayed plenty healthy. And like you said, he's producing the full game. And so it might just be the thing where that kind of guy can't exist. There are plenty of, quote unquote, smaller, faster guys in NFL history who've stayed plenty healthy and have done a really good job and stayed explosive.
I'm wondering, you're the right person to ask this. Okay. Tyron Smith comes back. Your offensive line, especially in the run game, is playing very well. Do you just move Tyler Smith back to left guard and put Tyron back at left tackle and just say, we'll figure it out? Or are you worried about screwing up the combination that you've had for most of this season?
I think if you're fully confident in Tyron being healthy and being back to where he is and game ready, you put him back at left tackle. He's not a guy you're going to move. I mean, he played right tackle a very long time ago. But if he's fully healthy, having him as your 6th lineman and having that guy can only play if Tyler Smith gets hurt, or I guess theoretically if your left guard gets hurt and then Tyler Smith goes back to left guard, I'm not really sure that's the best way to kind of go about it. The best version of the Cowboys O-line has Tyron Smith at left tackle. And so, I think you'd be willing to move Tyler back to left guard. And, that does kind of hide a few of the things that he doesn't do quite as well at this point. And, kind of playing a little bit more physical, a little bit less with your hands, can kind of body guys up a bit better at the guard position.
You feel like that's a big time transition for somebody who's played left tackle for the first half of his rookie season? Do you think that could be smooth if they did end up moving him to left guard? Or would you assume there are going to be some growing pains, some just time spent acclimating to a new spot?
I think there's, a little bit of growing pains, but he played left guard for most of training camp. So
Yeah.
he has, kind of those high pressure, he doesn't have game reps per se, but he has high pressure reps there. And that was the position he was supposed to play. And now he's got, 10 plus games it'll be of experience at left tackle, which is a lot more difficult. Like I think most guys would tell you moving from left tackle down to left guard is going to be a much easier transition than, what he did to start the season, which is moving from left guard to left tackle. So the fact that he's, kind of grown into this role, started playing, some better ball and gotten a little bit more comfortable at left tackle makes me think he could move there and, after a week or two kind of get things solidified. And you might not, see that big of a drop off from, the current left guard to him. And, if Tyron's healthy and you're able to kind of get those two guys working together, the double team potentials with, a healthy Tyron and Tyler Smith and then Zach Martin and Terrence Steele on the right, they could kind of turn into like Philly and just start mashing the ball and really do some cool things.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get back with You Have My Attention.
Gentlemen, you have my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Never mind the break. We're coming back with You Have My Attention. All right. Miami in the offense, the Dolphins offense. You have my attention. All right. Another huge game from the Dolphins. The running game gets going today. We were talking about, do we just want to talk about the running game? But we can't. Like the way that Tua and the passing game are playing is absolutely ridiculous. Like he had another monster game today with a couple really impressive moments that I want to dig into. You and I haven't talked about the Dolphins offense at all this season. After today, after the way the first 10 weeks of the year have gone, where are you on the Dolphins offense?
Oh, like thinking they could rip through the playoffs and very easily get to the Super Bowl if they stay healthy. I wouldn't have wanted to talk about, I know, just the running game because that's a combination of the Browns' running defense and
that's also
their
the
general
concern.
defense.
It's hard to judge them.
But it's also part of Miami figuring out who they are, and now defenses are shitting themselves trying to figure out how do we stop these guys. And even though we can talk about Tua's downfield passing and the numbers are good, the accuracy and the ability to hit guys in stride, not quite as good as the numbers would show, but still incredibly efficient. I think he's the best, guy throwing 20 plus yards down the field, which is because Tyreek is wide open and Waddle is wide open. And so even though he can't drive it downfield like a Herbert or an Allen or Mahomes, he's still super successful. I keep talking about the 2017 version of Alex Smith. Like, you don't have to have a strong arm or the greatest velocity to make that work if you're throwing in rhythm and if your guys are that wide open because your offense is that good. And so teams are now realizing we have to cover 50, 60 yards deep because it's very real that they can push the ball downfield like that. And so now that opens up everything underneath. And this is an offense which has so much speed in really every position now. Now the running back room solidified, the offensive line, you can tell, starting to figure it out. I think run game wise, there was a combination of doing a lot of things out of shotgun that the Shanahan tree is used to doing from under center and kind of figuring out the exact angles and timing and relationship of the running back to what you're expecting on the offensive line at the tight end and receiver positions. But you could tell today, man, like the run game, the receivers on the backside are coming in and sealing off at the right angle. Like they all understand the offense so much better now, and they get those angles, and there's so much space to make it work. And McDaniel is, realizing how to maximize every single guy's strength. Like they're doing a lot more shotgun because Tua is really good at it, and that's what he's used to. And they're incorporating the best versions of what Tua's done in college and at the pros with the best things from the Shanahan playbook, with the best things you can do with the best receiver and the next fastest guy in the NFL. And it looks awesome. And it doesn't look like there's really a way to stop it. I hope Miami can stay healthy because I like good offenses. I love watching, good football, and they're playing really good football right now, on the offensive side of the ball for sure.
It's hard not to watch them and not just smile. Like there are sequences of plays where you're like, oh, that's good shit, man. Like the first quarter today, it was like 8:25 left in the first quarter. They had a little play fake from the gun. and they got him on the move just a little bit. And their offensive line is playing much, much better, obviously, than they did last year, but still is the area of this team you'd be the most concerned about. When Teron's in there, it's obviously much more solidified. But anytime you can get him on the move a little bit, get him out of the pocket, change the launch point, you're going to help yourself. So they just do that in subtle ways. The next play, they ran a run from the gun, like you're talking about, with Ingold coming across to kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage and Hunt pulling up. It was beautiful. Timing, angles, everything. Next play, they do it the opposite way. Ingold coming across, another chunk play in the run game. Next play is the Ingold touchdown. He comes across the formation again, sneaks out into the flat. Tua does a great job of making the unblocked edge miss, dumps it off to him, touchdown. So you have these 3 plays in sequence where he's coming across the formation. There's 2 run designs attached to it, and then there's a play action throw off of it that they score a touchdown on. And that's sort of stuff where it all fits together. And you talk about them understanding the offense, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, really settling in. You see that stuff all the time. And then you get to the Tua plays. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, they probably have 4 more counters to those looks. Like,
Absolutely,
that's the thing playing for Shanahan. Like, I'm going to do this, they're going to react to it, and then I'm going to do this, and they're going to react to it, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then that. And there's so many levels of what we can do to mess with guys on, like, just a tight end or a fullback coming across the formation. You can cut the defensive end. You can block him up high. You can bluff him, release to the flat. You can hit him, get up, release to the flat. You can miss them all together and sneak out vertically. Like, there's so many things off of one simple guy coming across the formation. And now you tie that to, 5 skill guys and the quarterback and shotgun under center, a little bit of pistol stuff sprinkled in, putting these guys in the backfield. Like, this is the best version of what the offense could be. And it's cool that we've seen it. And like you're saying, we're going to talk about, like, Tua as a passer looks as good as he's ever looked as well.
He looks really, really good. And there are moments that to me, this is a perfect encapsulation of the conversation that we're having about Tua, where you watch the play and it's like, it's underthrown. Like, he just doesn't have that big of an arm, but it makes sense within what they're trying to accomplish. It's 5:33 left in the second quarter. It was 1st and 10. The Browns brought the 3rd safety off the edge on a play action pass. So the pocket is crumbling and he doesn't have much time after he gets his head around, but he gets the throw off, and it's a Tyreek down the right sideline, and it's underthrown, quote unquote, by probably 4 or 5 yards. But him even getting that ball off and knowing where that space is a testament to him understanding exactly what he's trying to accomplish and where he's trying to attack a team. So there's an ocean of space out there, but he knows it. He knows all he has to do is get that ball out of his hand, and it's going to be a huge play. It was really similar, and it reminded me of the 3rd and 13 completion they had against Detroit on that cover 0 play in the first half, where the ball is underthrown, but the fact that he even gets it off and knows that if he does get it off, it's going to be a huge play, he deserves credit for that. So it all is coming from these different directions where he's doing everything he can do within his skill set to make the offense really good. The design of it all makes sense, and I think is even getting better as they learn their personnel. And you have all this heat coming at you all of the time that just makes teams terrified in every single moment of every single game. So when you're trying to divvy up credit, it's hard to pull one thing apart from the other. But I think the conclusion is it doesn't really matter. The end result is the scariest offense in football right now.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing that when you criticize the arm strength or the underthrows, like, that doesn't mean that you don't think he's a good player. Like, we're just talking about what the best version could look like compared to top guys in the NFL. Because when you're the 5th overall pick or the 6th overall pick, that's how you're going to be compared. Like, you were one of the best quarterback prospects coming out of high school and then coming out of college. So yeah, you're going to be compared to Mahomes and Allen and the back-to-back Rodgers MVP seasons and say, do you have the same top level as these other guys? Like, the stuff that we knew he could do really well is process, get the ball out quickly, be very accurate and 20 yards and under. I think we've seen all of that, and the best he's been at all of that throughout the season. And for the most part, not super surprising that he's good at that. Like, that is what he's good at. The question was, can all of that overcome, what is a deficiency compared to the top level quarterbacks? And so far the answer is yes, because the offense, like you said, is so drastically good that there aren't many off-platform plays. There is so much space that they can afford those underthrows. There are just so many good things happening that he's able to look exceptional in the offense. And there are a couple throws today that you realize, like, he obviously knows himself and he's a good quarterback and knows how to throw the ball, but he alters like the height of the release in terms of where the ball is going. Like if it was, in baseball terms, it'd kind of be launch angle, but that's kind of how he buffers the lack of arm strength per se. And there's these throws like the one to the back left corner of the end zone that he just releases it. It's beautiful. And that throw was so much higher than some of his others, and not because he needed to necessarily like throw it super high to drop it in, but because like that's the calibration he needed to get it to that spot in the right area. Because again, Mahomes or Allen, they could have made that throw and they could have thrown it with a little bit more of kind of a driving, pushing the ball through the wind, and still put it up top level where your guy could go up and get it. But for him, he's adjusting the angles of throws kind of based on the velocity he needs. And it shows, like you said, a true mastery of kind of what he's doing, his understanding of himself, what he needs to get to the receivers. But, getting to that kind of top level question is, Tua making the offense like drastically better, or theoretically, are you able to plug someone else in there who can make quick decisions to get the ball out? I'd say the last few weeks, it does seem like he's trending towards being someone who's, maximizing the offense to what he can do. I don't know if it's maximizing the offense compared to what, again, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert could do. And once you truly get a guy who could like launch it 70 yards downfield. And so that's the Tua debate. And that's the frustrating thing, is like, it's so close to being the best thing that you could possibly wish. There's just like this one little thing holding it back. But I think for now, just watching him, appreciating it, and, just seeing this machine that they've turned into on offense, it's really fun. And, they're definitely on my TV every single week.
The touchdown throw to Sherfield was gorgeous. And on that same drive, it was a third down. He changed the protection where he moved the back to the other side. The back picked up a free runner through the left B gap, and that was the third down. He hit to Waddle on the right sideline. There's like a beautifully placed ball. That was the best drive of the game from him for me. Just those couple throws were just like, okay, that is like high degree of difficulty stuff. Taking it back to the big picture for a second, or last weekend on Friday, there was some conversation happening online about the amount of man coverage that the Dolphins have seen and how they don't see much. And I wanted to make it clear, like, the Dolphins don't see a lot of man coverage because Tyreek Hill is on the Dolphins. Like, if you look at the man coverage rates that the Chiefs saw last year and that the Chiefs see now, they're very different. And there's only one thing that's different about the Chiefs offense. If you look at the man coverage rates that the Dolphins see now compared to last year, they're very different. There's really only one thing that's different about the Dolphins offense. But that doesn't take anything away from Tua. Because what you're saying, how many guys could be doing this? It feels like so perfect, because teams play mostly zone against them. And that's where his skill set really shines. He's moving guys with his eyes. It's ball placement. It's timing. It's anticipation. It's understanding exactly what the play is trying to accomplish. Okay. If I have this guy here, and there's one zone defender I have to worry about, how do I move that guy and on time and accurately throw the ball into this window? He's fantastic at anticipating and finding windows. And that skill is accentuated within an offense that sees almost all zone coverage. So it's hard to answer how a different quarterback would be doing in these specific circumstances, because in a lot of ways, the circumstances are tailored to what he does well. And I think that's why we're seeing the results that we're seeing from them so far.
Right. And where my mind goes, and, thinking about kind of the business side and salary cap and all that, this is awesome when you've got a guy who's, a top 5 pick and can be on a rookie contract. If you now have to pay him market salary, and, Burrow, Herbert, Lamar, they're going to jump the quarterback market like crazy. It's going to get into the low 50s. Let's just assume they get it to 51, 52, 53, and say Tua is in the 48 to 50 range, or, above that, and he gets the next best contract, and he's making $53 million. Now, are you able to have the same level of offense once he's taking up 40 million more, 30 million more in cap space, and maybe you can't pay Waddle, or you do pay Waddle and Tua and Tyreek, and now you're skimping somewhere else, and realistically, offensively, that would have to be on the offensive line, and now they're not quite as good. He's got to move around a little more. He's not able to have those rhythm plays. Like, that's the biggest question is this the guy that you can pay top dollar and still be able to build a good enough offense because he can lift everybody around him to that degree that the other top quarterbacks have? And that's really the root of the, is he, one of the top quarterback questions.
I don't know how to answer that right now. And that's not an indictment of him, right? Like, it just, that's what makes this conversation really, really difficult, is that it's hard to know. These guys that look excellent in excellent circumstances, because you can do this with your other resources. What happens when those surroundings start to erode a little bit? And that's something that we're going to have to figure out. Like, I'm trying to look at it right now. And so the way that the Dolphins did this, I think, is actually pretty smart. So Tyreek Hill has a $31 million cap hit next year, 2023, when Tua has a $9.6 million cap hit. Makes total sense. 2024, Tyreek's cap hit goes down to $25 million. And then in 2025, it's $28 million. So the way they've structured this thing actually seems like it might be palatable for them to pay both of those guys and pay the quarterback at the same time, and maybe skimp in some other areas of the roster, because I don't know what the answer to that question is. It's impossible to know, and that's why these teams are smart in the way they've built it. It's like, all right, we have the excess capital right now. We have the room. And in the Dolphins case, they had the draft capital because of all the trades they'd made and the way that they'd torn things down. So let's do everything we can to make sure we're allowing this guy to succeed in the short term, and we'll figure the rest out later. So I'm in the we'll figure the rest out later stage of this, because I don't want to start having the conversation about whether Tua deserves an extension.
Fair enough. I could go on this for another few minutes, but I think you're right. It's very premature. Let's just appreciate really good football, really good offense.
They got 2 more years of this, right? So right now you're looking at his contract. In 2023, he's making 9.6, and then the 5th-year option. So the 5th-year option will be, I don't know exactly, but I'm sure like in the $20 million range, probably somewhere around there, right? Like that's about what Kyler's making this year, I want to say.
Well, so where I was going to go, if we really want to get into it, is, does he say, I'm not playing without a new contract? And then does he force their hand? And that kind of accelerates the timeline, because if you want to wait until another year, like you have 2 years essentially from when a guy signs a contract at the quarterback position until his cap hit balloons into like the 50 and 60 range. Like the first 2 years are relatively manageable because of the signing bonus and a lower salary. So you do have that window. It's just, can we push that out by another year and make it a 3-year window instead of a 2-year window until he's got a top 5 cap hit? Or is he just going to keep rolling and be in the MVP discussion and be like, nope, you're going to pay me Herbert and Burrow rates, and I'm not going to play if you don't do that? And now you're accelerating that timeline. And that's where it starts to get a little bit more interesting, because again, you've got the Tyreek deal, you've got Chubb, you just paid a bunch of money to. Like, they have high paid defensive guys. Waddle's going to be up. They're just, this is one of the problems when you're a really good team with a lot of really good players. You got to figure out how to allocate the money.
I would probably try to buy as much time as I could, because I do think that we've seen with some of these quarterback contracts, there's buyer's remorse fairly fast, because it's the exact conversation. Like, I think he's more central to the Dolphins' success on offense than like Jared Goff was to the 2019 Rams. But a lot of these quarterback contracts that have been handed out, when these guys are on these rookie deals, and their success has been in part driven or in part helped by the players around them, we've seen what happens when the picture starts to change. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I do think it's something to keep in the back of your mind as you think about when you're going to hand out this sort of deal.
I'm with you.
All right. Interesting. The last guy, I don't want to do this right now. The last guy I want to mention about the Dolphins, the Jeff Wilson trade looks awesome. Mm-hmm. Getting him for a pick that you're just throwing in, and what he was on the ground today and the pop he's giving him, because you're always a Mostert injury away. Like, I hate to say it, but when you look at his history, it's hard not to be concerned about it. And the fact that now you have Wilson in there, who obviously knows the offense, obviously knows the terminology, it was good immediately, and looks like he's got a lot of pop when you put him in there. Like, that's very good news for what this offense could look like over the rest of the season, even if Mostert were to get banged up. And they just didn't have that previously with Edmonds.
Yeah, it looks awesome. And again, the biggest thing, like you said, he knows the offense. He's able to come in, like the understanding of the angles, where to get to, kind of how to feed off not just the offensive line blocks, but the downfield blocks, the receiver blocking. That's kind of that next level thing that it takes a little bit of time to kind of fully trust in that Shanahan offense, because we associate that offense, especially on kind of inside zone plays, for running backs winding it all the way back, and you get to the backside corner or the backside safety, and that's not truly the design of the play. You're still reading out properly, but if the defense is playing gap sound, like, well, that gap's closed, that gap's closed, that gap's closed, and you start going backwards, and like the open gap is all the way on the backside, and then you get to that backside corner, and the backside receivers now push cracked on the safety, and it's one-on-one with the corner, and as most people would like to say, I would expect my running back to win a one-on-one matchup in space with a corner. And he gets that. He understands the angles, and then he has the juice and the ability to break the tackle when he does get there. So, yeah, you're looking at basically 2 number 1 running backs, and you still got other guys in that position group that can also run the ball pretty efficiently. So, best case scenario, you've got 2 awesome running backs you can rotate in who have complementary and really excellent skill sets. And worst case scenario, one of them gets hurt and you've got insurance for it. So like you said, a really good trade and a good use of draft capital for those 5th, 6th round picks. I mean, you look at the data and it's like a 10% chance of being a quality starter, when I can just go get a guy that I know is already a quality starter and going to really solidify an important position on the offense.
I mean, that's just one of those moves where as soon as they make the McCaffrey trade, they know Eli Mitchell's coming back. I'm sure you can get him for the right price. And I think that Chris Greer's done a really good job of being smart about how they've added a lot of talent to this team over the last year or so. The Chubb deal we're pushing the chips in. And if you look at the actual value of it, I'm sure it's going to be hard to get much from that, but I still get why you make that trade. All right, next one here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers playoff chances. You have my attention. I was looking at the 538 numbers earlier today, and after that game, the Bucs are 5-5. It says they have an 85% chance to make the playoffs.
Oh man,
at 5-5, 85%. It's wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, with that in mind, this idea that we're going to see the Bucs in the playoffs, better chance than not. Atlanta losing to Carolina, the state of that Falcons team, the state of the Panthers team, what the Saints look like right now, like, the Bucs are going to win this division. I put a lot of money on it. So, I think we always thought that. The question was, by the end of the season, by the start of the playoffs, are they going to be scary? Are they going to be a team that lives up to not even preseason expectations, but some version of our expectations for them, where they can actually knock off one of these teams in the NFC? The game they played today, does that give you hope that they can get there by the end of the year?
Not from the game they played today. I think you're just banking on Tom Brady and the fact that they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and like maybe they've got kind of one last hurrah on them once you reach the playoffs, and like that can be the thing that fully motivates you to give your best performance. But you just kind of see a team, and I watched a little bit of the game at the beginning, and the first drive, they plow their head straight down for a 0-yard run. The next play, Brady's off with the receiver a little bit. And the next play, the receivers are like looking at each other, trying to figure out the splits, who's on the ball, what they're doing. Ball snapped. Brady throws it to the other side of the field and overthrows Julio. So, yeah, it's just one drive. They go on, they score 3 touchdowns, and they beat a pretty good Seattle team who's been playing well lately. And you can kind of forget about those things. But, like, why are they having issues still with a veteran receiver group lining up correctly? Why are Brady and Evans so off on pretty much every single game? They just seem off on what they're supposed to do, where the ball is being placed. There's just a lot of those things that don't make sense to be 10 weeks into the season, to be having, this many kind of like the mental errors. It's hard to parse out mental errors between, players when they're both kind of quality veterans, and you would think that they know what they're doing. And then, the left-witch press conferences have been a little bit brutal the past few weeks, and just a clear lack of understanding of, kind of what drives offenses and what kind of leads to that's a nice way to say it.
So
go ahead.
This is my point here. Okay. It is brutal. And some of the things he's saying are objectively not true, but what we saw today is enough to trick him potentially into running this offense in the most efficient way possible. So he said this week.
No.
So So here
they had more
here's
success running the ball today, which is going to trick him into wanting to run the ball more. That's not the more successful version.
So hear me out, okay? They had more success running the ball. They had a lot more, okay? They were 10th in the NFL in EPA per rush on Sunday. They came in 31st. Rachaad White, potentially a driver of that. I typically would be worried about them having more success running the ball and have that lead to running more. But Byron Leftwich is under the impression, he has said this, that we need to run the ball well to use play action or it doesn't work. Objectively not true. Tom Brady was 8th in the NFL in EPA per dropback on play action before this game. The problem was, because they weren't running the ball well, they weren't using play action. Brady was 37th of 39 quarterbacks in weeks 1 through 9, and the percentage of his dropbacks that involved play action was 15%, even though he was 7th in EPA per dropback on those plays. I said 8th. That was wrong. Okay. He had 59 play action dropbacks over the first 9 weeks of the season. He had 9 on Sunday. He was 8 of 9 for 110 yards. 31% of his dropbacks on Sunday involved play action, twice as much as over the first 9 weeks of the season. So if they are running the ball more efficiently, does that mean that they will use more play action and actually accidentally stumble into the best version of who they can be on offense? Because that's what I watched today. Along with the running, they're running downhill play action and getting chunks off of it. And that's what they need to do to actually be scary. So somehow with Rachaad White, some better play up front, which I do think they got today. Brady was pressured on, looking at it, 5 of his 29 dropbacks in this game. Might say something about Seattle's front, which we can get into in a second. But if they're playing a little bit better up front, if they're running the ball a little bit better with White, do they use a little bit more play action? And do we see some of those gashes in the play action game that they're doing when this offense is really rolling? Because that is what would make me a little bit more optimistic.
So I can see where your mind's going with that. When I was listening to you, it sounded a lot like when I was in school, and it's like, if X leads to Y and if Y leads to Z, then does Z equal A? And like, like sometimes it should work that way, but it doesn't always work that way. Saying that they're going to like accidentally stumble into a better version of the offense does not assure me and does not make me feel better about things. So my answer is still going to be no. Like, they still got fundamental issues. They've got a just severe misunderstanding of, what drives NFL offenses and which things are complementary, which things are not, which things are more efficient, which things aren't. They've got too many veteran players who don't seem to be on the same page and don't seem to fully kind of understand where things are at. All that being said, again, the NFC South is abysmal. They're going to make the playoffs, and they've got enough built up equity to, do something in the playoffs. I don't know what that something is, but, they're going to have a home game against one of these other teams that is going to have a good record, but DVOA is going to say they're the 14th best team. And yeah, if Tampa is the 19th best team, like, they can very easily have a good game, especially at home. So, I don't love them long term, and today's game doesn't really drastically change things for me. But I think it's a really good step for them to at least win a game and feel like, yeah, we did things better. We put a relatively full game together, and now we can kind of get things back on track and just have a little bit of that confidence that I'm sure that they were kind of doubting themselves and feeling a little down, and just that frustration of what's going wrong, how do we fix it? Now maybe they have the confidence that, like, all right, we've done it. We've pulled out this gritty, gutsy game against the Rams, and then now we go to Germany. We have this more complete game against the Seattle team that's playing really well. We're going to get back to being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I can't quit them. I just can't. Like, the way they look today.
It's Brady. How can you?
I can't quit them. Some of the downhill play action stuff and just some of the windows that, again, I want to see this team playing downhill at you. And that they were more like that today than they have been for huge chunks of this season. And there are also a couple plays in this game. On the first drive, Evans just snatches the ball away on a contested catch. Godwin made a ridiculous play up the left sideline. Like, at a certain point, if they just somehow find a combination of, we're running the ball this well, we're using this much play action, and they have the talent, like, I still think they're going to be a little bit dangerous, and they're getting healthier on the defensive side. Getting Winfield back, having some guys back on the back end. I think the Seattle offense is playing really well. They gave them a bunch of problems. So I'm not all the way back there. I'm not all the way back yet, but I do feel better now than I did this morning. I will readily admit that. On the Seattle side of this, 1 of 5 on 3rd and short in this game, which is brutal. And then I'm concerned about their ability to get after the quarterback. The fact that Brady was not pressured at all today, and in some of those really big moments, he had absolutely all day to throw. I think that is where the Seattle team is going to be undone over the rest of the season. I do think that's probably the weakest part of who they are. Interior pass rush, secondary edge guys, all that kind of stuff. I think that showed up in a big way today.
Yeah, it was kind of strange that their defense became the third best defense in football over a 5-week window because we just didn't think they had the personnel to pull that off. And, a lot of that is kind of rookies on the outside being really good players and also being named after other famous athletes. And
also having Leonard Fournette throw passes to you that are intended for Tom Brady. That also helps your interception totals over the course of the season.
That is also correct, but I don't know that this game is going to bear out their top 3 DVOA status. But this, like you said, they didn't seem like they had the kind of personnel that could turn into a clear top of the league defense, and that's how they had been playing for the last month or so. And so this game, like you said, is, as much as I just said, this one game doesn't change much about Tampa and my outlook on them. I think it kind of re-solidifies the fact that Seattle is a bit deficient, and they've been playing really good football on the defensive side, and everything's kind of come together, and they're playing, one of those, some of the parts is better than the individual parts types of things. I don't know if I said that correctly, but it's midnight where I am, and so I'm allowed to say some crazy things. But they're just playing really good team defense, and when you go up against those better offenses and the teams that can get the ball out quick and or have a better offensive line, especially when you look to the playoffs, you're thinking about the Eagles offensive line wise, you're thinking about San Fran, just pounding the ball. It gets a little bit scary that like you said, the defense line isn't quite there personnel wise with a Dallas defensive front or what the Vikings can do getting after the passer. It's just not quite there, and gives you a little bit of worry about how this team can do in the last half of the season, and especially if they do make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that the version of the Vikings team I saw today is definitely scarier than Seattle, and I'm willing to correct that based on some conversations we've had on the show recently. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, I think, is what you're after there. Yeah, cool. And I do think that the Vikings, I do think the Seahawks have that kind of feel this year. All right, we're gonna take one more quick break, and then we're gonna get to not mad, just disappointed. The holidays should be celebrated in style, but why stop at decking the halls when you could be decked out from head to toe? Indochino makes it easy to upgrade your look with made-for-you suits, shirts, outerwear, and more. And for a limited time, shop Indochino's Black Friday event for the biggest sale of the year. Indochino gives you a made-for-you experience at a great price. And during their Black Friday event, made-for-you suits start at just $329, and premium shirts start at just $49. Elevate your style without spending a fortune. It's the season of giving, so give yourself something made just for you with Indochino. Shop the Black Friday event now through November 27th at Indochino.com and get 10% off all purchases of $3.99 or more using promo code MAYS. That's INDOCHINO.com, promo code MAYS. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Creating a free job posting on LinkedIn Jobs is easy. You just add the job and purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. With simple tools like screening questions, you can make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/mays. That's linkedin.com/MAYS to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Reserve Bar is your online source for premium and luxury spirits, wine, and champagne. And now Reserve Bar offers same-day delivery. They have a vast lineup of rare and hard-to-find bottles, premium brands, celebrity spirits, and limited releases that you won't find at your local store. No one does spirits gifting better than Reserve Bar. Looking for an elevated gift? ReserveBar.com has you covered, and you can get that gift delivered right to your door. They also have barware, glassware, cocktail recipes, and more. Need something for a party tonight? Reserve Bar now offers same-day delivery straight to your door. Visit ReserveBar.com today and use promo code MAYS to save $10 off your purchase of $75 or more on spirits, wine, or pre-made cocktails, but only when you use our special offer at ReserveBar.com with code MAYS. That's ReserveBar.com, code MAYS. This offer expires December 31st, 2022.
We're still cool, man. We're still cool.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
All right, let's talk about the AFC West, which you know a lot about. The Raiders and the Chargers, or excuse me, the Raiders and the Broncos. We talk about the Chargers a different time. The Raiders and the Broncos had playoff hopes coming into this season, right? Broncos trade for Russell Wilson. What can they do? Were they a quarterback away? The Raiders go out and get Devontae Adams. They signed Chandler Jones. They made the playoffs last year. Well, the Raiders are 2-7. They lost to a team today that hired a coach who had never coached an NFL game or a game at the college level or a football game of any real consequence. The Broncos today scored 10 points against a Titans team that was missing Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Fulton, Amani Hooker, among other pieces. Disaster seasons from both of these teams. Let's start with the Raiders, okay? Are we being too drastic or too reactionary saying that this could be a one and done thing for Josh McDaniels based on how bad the Raiders look? Because coming into this game, and I think for most of the season, any of those rumblings I kind of thought were silly. One and done, you have to be so bad to justify that. Do you think the Raiders have been bad enough that they have to consider any possible decisions after the season's over?
They're on the trajectory that gets coaches fired, where you play a little bit better at the beginning of the year. You kind of figure things out a bit, and then you start going downhill. And what owners hate to see is teams who look like they're losing steam late in the year. They don't look like they're getting better. Carr had that really emotional press conference where it seemed like he was kind of saying that a lot of guys on the team don't care as much as they should, and they don't prepare the way they should. He said he loves Josh and the rest of the coaching staff. I couldn't tell if he was trying to put them in that pile at all, but they're just going in a direction that seems obvious that they're getting worse. They're not getting better. They're not showing signs of improvement. They're not really like an older team, but they do seem like they have the higher paid guys that they should be winning right now. It's not like a grow into success timeline for them. And so it seems plausible that could be the case. Now this whole New England power structure and bringing in a GM and a coach are kind of tied together. I don't know if you fire both of them at once. That seems a little drastic. But then if you fire a Belichick, head coach, and you keep the Belichick GM, have we really seen what that looks like outside of it? And I don't really know there. But they're not on a good trajectory. And dude, 3 weeks ago, I was telling people, I think the Raiders are the second best team in the AFC West. And I think they're going to make the playoffs. No joke. I thought they were better than Chargers.
They were losing all these close games. They were absolutely better than their record indicated.
They knew what they were good at. They were successful with it. Their O-line was playing great. Carr was looking good. They were driving the ball down the field. They were running well. They were play actioning. They knew who they were, and they were playing well within that system. And now they're not playing quite as well overall, and they're losing close games, and they're losing games to bad teams. It's just really bad, and it's turned really quickly, and that's kind of the weird thing.
Right now, at this moment, the Raiders have the second pick in the draft.
Oof.
Okay. Derek Carr, the way his contract is structured, they can move on from him for no penalty whatsoever. It was really just a 1-year deal where the guarantees kicked in, I think, on February 15th. I think it's all of his 2023 base salary, which is like $31 million, and $7 million of his 2024 salary. But that doesn't become guaranteed until the day after Valentine's Day. So they could theoretically move on from him. He has a no trade clause. But let's play out this hypothetical. There is a place where he'd want to go. And I'm sure a lot of teams that need a quarterback would be interested in Derek Carr this offseason because it's $31 million next year. I think it's 42 and 42. Those are base salaries. You could play with those. You convert some of it to a signing bonus. You do something funny with it where you can get the cap number down. There's some flexibility built in. Do you think the Raiders should consider starting over with a young quarterback because they're kind of gifted this opportunity to move on from Carr and hit the reset button?
Yeah, you should always be looking to get better, and especially at the quarterback position. And if you identify Bryce Young as the guy who can drastically alter, keep saying drastically, but dramatically change the face of your franchise and do something that can make the team that much better, and you think you've got this little boost and then the short term, and then also he can be the real deal long term, you should do it. And you have the draft ammo for once to be able to actually get that guy without giving up a Trey Lance package and kind of hamstringing yourself for the future. You always are looking to get better at every single position. the Chiefs should be looking to get better at quarterback. There's just no reason scenario where they find anyone who's better and more easily acquirable than Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's just not going to happen for the next 15 years. But like, every team is always looking to get better at any position, especially when you can move on from the guy. Like, it's one thing to say, well, we have to pay $25 million in dead money, and this would be a whole reboot and all these things. But like, theoretically, you get, again, Bryce Young, and you have an offense that utilizes his legs, and now you're able to be a little bit more multiple, and he can do these other things. And maybe you don't have to fully reset, because again, you've got two edge rushers who are really good on really large contracts, and you've got wide receiver who's reaching the end of kind of peak wide receiver play, and he's making a lot of money, and you've got some offensive line pieces that are getting paid, and you're not switching too much. So you would potentially want to restart at the position, but not like the whole team, because that would be a bit of a couple year thing to get rid of some contracts and to get eat some dead money and kind of do it. So you should absolutely be looking to upgrade at the quarterback position. The question is, can you make that decision that quickly? Because if you have to move on from him by the 15th of February, like, that's not nearly enough time for these scouts to fully flesh things out. You're not going to be able to do all the meetings with the guy that you want. You're not going to get to see him at the combine and get to do the pro days and kind of fully evaluate. So that's going to be the interesting part, is whether you feel good enough about one of the quarterbacks, whether it's Bryce, whether it's Stroud, whether it's someone else, that you would move on that early from the quarterback without maybe knowing specifically which one of those two guys it would be.
What do we think about the Colts right now? And the fact that if they had just played Matt Ryan over the last couple of weeks, instead of the owner forcing them to go play Sam Ehlinger, they potentially could have beat Washington. They probably would have been in that game against New England. And maybe this would look a little bit different for them. It's hard to, I don't think it really matters. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, what has all of this been for? If Matt Ryan's going to be able to play that decent and allow your offense to actually operate.
Well, I mean, he was playing better ball than Ehlinger, but that's not a big bar to jump over. So
no, it's not saying much.
No, like, they just were a bad football team, and like, the record was different than the way they looked and the way that the advanced stats said they were. Just because you have a good record, does that mean you should kind of push for the 7 seed, if that's theoretically a possibility, at the expense of potentially playing this young guy and seeing if he has something for the future? Like, he had a really good preseason, and I know they were excited about him. Obviously, Irsay cared enough to, like you said, upend the season and bench Matt Ryan and all these other things. I just didn't think they were a good team at all, and so I didn't really think that changing the quarterback made that big of a difference. Like, the O-line was really struggling. The quarterback was struggling.
Played better today.
Was struggling. Yeah, they did. You got to get those O-line head coaches with that experience. Call me, Raiders, after you fire Josh after the end of the season. But yeah, it's
you would hate that. You would hate that job.
Oh yeah, I'd say no, but the money would be nice. But all right, look, give someone else $8 million a year. You were going to give me 10. I'll take $2 million to be an O-line consultant, and we'll hash it out. I'll stay in Kansas City, but I promise I won't tell the Chiefs what you guys are doing.
All right, let's get to the Broncos here very quickly. Just another disastrous game on offense. I mean, the fact that the Titans won this game with like 1 flea flicker and 3 Ryan Tannehill throws, and the Broncos couldn't muster anything more than that. If you're on that Denver team and you're somebody who's going to be there for like multiple years, like if you're Garrett Bowles and you've signed a contract extension, your future, at least for the next couple seasons, is probably in Denver. And what they did to go get Wilson, and they gave him that contract. What are you thinking right now?
Very skeptical. Most guys don't have that kind of big picture view. Like, it's bad, but
you
kind of
would
trust the guy. Yeah, I know, but I would have been honed by years in Cleveland. So, no. So the interesting part is they didn't have to give him the big contract, but when they gave it to him, they gave it to him, in the offseason after OTAs. There was a really like weird report at the end of OTAs or before training camp that like they're going to tailor the offense to Russell Wilson's strengths. And it's like, well, obviously you should tailor the offense to your quarterback strengths, but he obviously showed enough in the offseason to be like, okay, let's give this guy $48 million a year and let's guarantee like 3 years of that. And this is for sure the guy that we traded for. So I don't know what that disconnect is between the guy they saw in the building who looked that good, who was that consistent day to day, who raised the level of everyone around him and was the leader that we know that he can be. The former Seattle players are, kind of crapping on what we thought he could be as a leader. But
that's also part of this.
Right. He clearly did something to show the GM, who seems to be well respected in the NFL, and got everyone excited that, like, all right, we finally solved the quarterback position. And then the season's unfolded, and he's looked like a totally different quarterback, a much worse quarterback, a guy who hasn't really been able to stay fully healthy on top of that. And all the stories coming out are that he's not really a good leader, and he kind of needs to be catered to and all these other things. So it's difficult. And if I was a veteran player, like, you kind of just got to play ball and, hope what you do is enough and hope you can turn it around. And just, like, you have that wonder in the back of your head, like, why was it so good in OTAs and why is it so bad now? And hopefully we can figure it out.
If you were dealing with a quarterback who was like a superstar quarterback, paid like it at the very least, and didn't seem to have any interest in being a part of the locker room, or was playing poorly enough that the stuff that you would kind of smirk about was becoming a little bit harder to ignore, how do you think that you would work through that? Because I don't think you've ever had to deal with that. The superstar quarterback that you played with is like a generally likable and beloved human being.
Yeah, I would struggle with that. That gets back to kind of what you were saying about Rodgers earlier. It would get difficult to not, tune it out is one thing, but then when you get to the point where it's just like, dude, get the fuck away from me. Like, it could get to that point really easily with a lot of guys in the locker room who are just tired of the act and the facade. And, he doesn't have the built up equity that he had in Seattle that kept him around for that long. And so now you're just this guy who's, been somewhat exposed as, being a little bit of kind of a caricature and just doing what he needs to do. Like, I don't know how I could watch those grueling press conferences and how cheesy and corny he is and just be like, my God, man, I got to block for you every single day. It would be difficult. And, you just have to remember that you want to make a lot of money too and be successful. And you just got to keep doing what you're doing. And, there isn't that part of you that's like, I'm going to give up the sack and, get this guy hurt or whatever. Like, no one thinks like that. That's not the way things work. Like, those storylines are great for movies, but, you still put yourself first over anything else. And so you just have to kind of compartmentalize the, personal side of not liking certain things with the professional and just kind of try your best because, again, you're really important for the other offensive linemen, other guys on the offense. Like, the defense is always looking towards the offensive line. Like, how are these guys doing up front? Are they being dogs? Are they, giving us what we need? And so it's a lot bigger than, just that one guy. And you kind of have to keep that in perspective.
All right, let's stick on the AFC West very quickly. Let's do 2 minutes of Chiefs talk. How are you feeling about the Chiefs right now?
I feel good. Not great. It just, it doesn't look clean. Like, they have the Tampa Bay game, which, was kind of a revenge game as much as we joke about revenge games, but like very clearly a lot of focus and energy going out there and kicking butt and kind of redeeming the Super Bowl from a couple years ago. And aside from that, it's been kind of up and down football. And even when, a relatively easy win today, all things considered, but first play of the game, actually before the first play, coin toss, they get the coin toss wrong. This is an Andy Reid team, which means you're supposed to defer, and they choose to take the ball, probably because whoever it was got told, like, hey, once we defer, and they choose, like, now you have to make sure you choose the ball after that, whatever that was, or like, if they defer, make sure you choose the ball. Well, they chose the ball, so got it wrong on the coin toss. Then surprise onside kick, don't recover that. There's another special teams turnover. There's an interception that was later in the game. There's a missed extra point. It's not clean football, and it's not consistently, clean football. And Jacksonville's bad enough that the game was relatively easy. So again, it gets back to my overarching theme, which is just get to the playoffs healthy and we'll figure it out then. So I'm not super concerned because the team has stayed relatively healthy. But like, it's not quite as consistent, and outside of Chris Jones, nobody can rush the passer. And that's going to be the biggest thing once the playoffs come. Like, can Chris overcome the lack of pass rush of everyone around him? Because if not, then, I don't think the team has the top end of what we thought Buffalo could be.
That's the thing you're most worried about, just personnel wise, is what's going to happen at the other pass rushing spots.
Yeah, because offensively, I trust Coach. I trust Pat. Like, I trust Travis, like they're going to be good enough that, they're going to score, 20, 24 points on good defenses, and they could score, 40 points on a not quite as good defense in the playoffs. But can you affect the other quarterback enough? And especially once you get into those good games against better teams who have better offensive lines, and you have only one guy that can, beat someone one-on-one and get to the quarterback more than once or twice a game. That's probably the thing that's limiting them the most. The flip side is the defensive backs look really good, and they do have some young guys who are playing better. So maybe that offsets the pass rush just a little bit. But as we talked about, you have to get after the quarterback. That's the number one most important thing on the defensive side. And, it has to be more than just one guy.
All right. That's all we got. Thank you very, very much for doing this. It is always great to chat with you. Really, really appreciate you filling in. Did us a favor, and it means a lot that you would take the time to do this at midnight or whatever time we happen to be recording this thing. So thank you very much for doing it, buddy.
Well, you're welcome. Good to see you and talk to you as always.
All right. Please, if you guys would, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this, there was a link in the description of the podcast. You can click on it. You can go do that. We will be back this week with Thursday Night Football recaps. We do this show live on YouTube. We'll do our weekly preview live on YouTube. Got some more YouTube specific stuff rolling out with Mitch actually coming to you hopefully pretty soon. So please subscribe if you have not subscribed to the podcast feed. If you haven't, if you want to go leave us a rating or review on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, it would mean a lot to us. It'd be a huge help. So if you like the show, let us know. We will be back on Monday, tomorrow, with Mike Sando for the Monday Hangover. Until then, appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.